Peace. What's up, guys? Jinx here, coming at you today with part 3 of the Let's Make Chrollo's Cosplay video series. Wanted to make these just to show folks, that you don't need the best materials to make good-looking cosplay. This episode is going to be me going through some of the individual pieces of the costume, explaining how I did the design and made all the pieces themselves, with the intention of maybe folks like you coming up with ideas for yourselves using some of my workarounds. So let's get started. Alright, we have a lot of things to cover, so I'm going to try to keep this as short and sweet as possible while hitting all the main points of the costume and the ideas behind how I made some of this stuff. So first off, we're just going to look at the overcoat itself. And you'll notice that it is a leather jacket. I got this off eBay probably a year ago now. It did not come purple. So the first point I want to make is that in order to paint things like leather or plastic, a good paint to use for that is floral paint. Floral like flower. I'll put a link in my description showing you guys where to find this stuff. But I basically painted the whole coat in purple floral paint. That was the first step. Did several coats of that. I then went and I hemmed it. So that means I cut along the seams to match the width of my arms and also the shape of Chrollo's opening in the front. So it gives it that nice little upside down triangle look. The second thing I did was brainstorm about how to make the mane here. What I decided to do was buy this, like fluffy sewing thread. And then I bought chicken wire, and I cut the chicken wire in the shape of kind of a crescent, and then I just wrapped the string around it over and over and over again until the mane was finished. And then I simply super glued that to the rim of the upside down V that I made before, and now you have this nice upwards facing collar here. The second thing that I did, or third at this point, was make these buttons. The yellow buttons here you see, they're just made out of your standard crafting clay, and then I literally put that in my toaster oven to fire it. I put some shining like spread on it to make it look more like plastic. Then I also glued these onto the coat. I even made the red fabric on the inside of Chrollo's coat, because if you watch the anime you'll see that there's actually a red lining. This is just no more than some red cape cloth you can find on Amazon that I cut up and put along the bottom of the coat. That way when you're walking you can see the red shining through. And then the last thing I did was actually, I used to have a different fur on the lining of the jacket, but I switched that out with the fur that I got originally for the mane. That way it looked more cohesive. And to make this, I actually cut a box into strips. So coming up and down here, this is one strip. And what I did then was I took the string and I wrapped it around that box, and then I just glued these box strips along the coat liner here. And I mean, it's not perfect of course, but it does come out looking pretty nice, pretty flashy. It's not like most of us have 8 hours a day to put into making a costume, so any cheap trick that we can get away with to making this, I used. Alright, we're going to switch over to the back now. This is one of my favorite things to figure out how to make. You'll see the standard 2 buttons made out of the same material we made before. But now Chrollo's little icon on the back of his jacket was a bit of a challenge because it has that shiny, textury appeal to it. So I wanted to use the same fabric I used for the inside red liner I showed previously to make the stitching on the back. The problem is that when you go to cut this kind of fabric, it tends to fray and then bend in unruly shape. So you can't really draw on it, you can't really cut it freehand. So what I did first was I mocked this up in PowerPoint just because I could. It's pretty easy. Anybody can probably get their hands on PowerPoint nowadays. And I just mocked up this design, I mirrored it to make both sides. And so now we had the shape. I printed out a few sheets of paper, I taped those sheets of paper together, and then I cut out the shape. So now I had a paper version of what you see here. In order to cut this fabric with normal scissors, I took that cut out piece of paper and I taped it onto the fabric. So what that did was made it more rigid. That way when I went to cut it, I could cut around the lines of the paper rather than just the fabric itself, which made the design come out much more clean, as you can see here. Of course, because this is fabric, it frays a little bit on the sides, but you could of course clean that up. You can actually still see the paper that I used because I never took it out, sitting here behind it. That way I wouldn't have to glue this directly onto the coat itself. I could leave it on the paper in case anything got messed up with it. Alright, last few things here. If any of you have a keen eye, you might have noticed that the coat did not have the cufflinks that you normally see on Chrollo's jacket. That's because these are actually just a separate piece I put on after I put on the coat. Same fabric as before. This is actually the shape that it comes in when you order it. So what I did was I rolled it up, put an opening in the center, and then you can simply slide your wrist in to put it on like a cuff link. I just put a few tacks of glue on the inside. That way this doesn't come unraveled. Second to last piece here is the boot itself. These are your standard duck boots. You can find them on Amazon for like, I don't know, 20 bucks, 15 bucks. I don't know how much it was when I got it. The standard button that we used previously. Again, I painted the bottom of the rubber boot with floral paint, and then I put some clear coat on that to give it some shine and also increase the durability of the paint itself. Of course, you would expect this to chip. It's not perfect, but it gets the job done. I also had to put a slit in the side of the boot, a little hard to see, but basically that's so that I could wrap it up a little tighter when I put it on my leg. That way the pants that we're about to show could fit over top of the boot. And that brings us to the pants, which was not too difficult to muster up. So on the front, you'll see I have the belt, just a normal belt, normal tan skin belt I wrapped around in the fashion that Chrollo wears on the front of his pants. I had to pin the back of these together because honestly they were too big for my waist, but you can't notice any difference in the legs themselves. I was more concerned that they matched the material that I was looking for. And then the last thing to show are on the leggings, the wrappings that go around Chrollo's leg, as you can see here. First, I tried to think of a way to get the authentic fabric that he used, and there's nothing really good out there, so what I decided to get were fighting wraps that you might use when you're boxing or something, or workout wraps. And I got a gray version of those, wrapped them in a pattern around the leg, similar to the pattern that's shown on his actual outfit. And I just tacked little bits of glue here and there to hold them on. I then got some black buttons and put those buttons on at the points that you see them on the costume itself. And I guess it's worth mentioning, but as you guys probably have seen before, the book that we made on my previous videos is here. If you want to see how this was fabricated, then please feel free to go watch that. If you guys have any questions, or I missed something and you want me to cover it, or you're curious as to where I got the materials from, leave a comment, like the video, share it, and I'll get back to you, no problem. See you later, guys. Peace.